Hey guys, I'm Geek. In this video with the Xbox Ally X out, I just wanted to create another video of me comparing my latest handheld to all my other handhelds that I currently use. I've already done a couple of these videos already with the Legion Go, the Steam Deck, so you might want to check those videos as well. So of course this is just for fun, just to show you guys the devices that I have compared to the latest device, which in this case is the ROG Xbox Ally X. So let's go ahead and get started. Now first, let's go ahead and compare with the device that's not actually a normal console, which is the PlayStation Portal. But I really been loving this device because thanks to that device, I barely play on the TV, and most of my PlayStation games I've been playing here on the PlayStation Portal via remote play, and I love it. But one thing that these two devices, they have very similar, is that in my opinion, when they were first announced, these two devices, I thought they were ugly. And I still think they're ugly. If you compare these devices with normal conventional handheld devices like the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally devices, and every device, I think these two devices are ugly. In design, I think they are ugly. But when you grab them in your hand and you start playing right away, that's where you realize, holy shit, these two devices have amazing ergonomics. And that's because the PlayStation Portal is actually, the controls are actually DualSense controllers with a screen in the middle, and that is so freaking awesome, and I love it. It's very thin, very light, because when it comes to CPU and all that, yes, it has some of that thing inside there, but this is mainly to be played as a remote play device. So it's not, spec wise, it's never going to be on par with any handheld device, including the ROG Ally X, of course. But the thing is, once I grab them in my hand and you start playing, you're like, holy crap, this feels super good. And that's why I always say that the PlayStation Portal is the best handheld device that feels in your hand, because you're actually holding a PlayStation 5 controller with a screen in the middle. So when the ROG Ally was announced, same thing. I did not like the way it looked, and I still don't think it looks nice at all. But once you grab it in your hand, you start to realize, holy crap, this thing feels very comfortable. And it's because they did exactly what PlayStation did with the PlayStation Portal. They cut a controller in half and put a screen in the middle. The only big difference here is when it comes to the thickness. This thing is very heavy compared to the PlayStation Portal. And this is heavy, of course, and thick because it has a Z1 processor on the inside, 24 gigabytes of RAM. It is loaded with good specs, big SSD as well. So that's why this one actually feels more thicker than that one. But when it comes to holding it in your hands, it feels as good as the PlayStation Portal. So that's why right now you can say, yes, Xbox Ally X is the most ugliest device in the market, but you can't say it's not the best one that feels in your hand. It is really good when it comes to ergonomics and how it feels when you're playing in your hands. Now, when it comes to the screen, of course, the ROG Ally X has a 7-inch Full HD 1920 by 1080p screen, 120 hertz, and brightness is around 500 nits, I believe. And of course, it's compatible with VRR. When it comes to the PlayStation Portal, it has an 8-inch screen, LCD as well. I don't think it has VRR, but it is actually 60 frames per second compatible, 60 hertz. So yeah, when it comes to the screen size, I do prefer this one right here, the PlayStation Portal. I wish that they would have gone 8 inches. I think 8 inches would have been awesome here. And of course, when it comes to the price, is drastically different. So this one goes for $1,000. Now this right here, keep in mind, for those asking, no, you cannot play your PlayStation 5 games if you don't have a PlayStation 5 console. So you need a PlayStation 5 console to play your PlayStation 5 games here remotely. But you can subscribe to the cloud streaming service, which I think is like $20, and you can actually use this without a console and play all these PlayStation games that you see here, and a lot of them are third-party games as well. And they play very great here via the cloud streaming. They are very, very good. And of course, this is the cloud streaming section. And when you go to the PlayStation, which I love, I just finished Ghost of Yote. You know, it hooks up to the PlayStation 5 via remote play. Of course, you always need to have a good connection. That's why I always have a great experience here. And most of the games, I just play them and finish them here on the PlayStation Portal, and I love it. But when it comes to the price of entry, right? This is going to cost you $1,000. This over here is going to cost you only $199, $200. That's it. So if you have a PlayStation and you want to play, you know, remotely or cloud streaming, this for $200 is a damn freaking steal. I love it. Also, if you don't have a PlayStation and you want to get yourself into this system, into this ecosystem, you can get a PlayStation 5 for $500 because they actually went up in prices. $500 plus this would be $700. You don't need the Pro version. If you get the PlayStation Pro, it's actually $749 plus this $200. It'll be $949. So it would still be cheaper than the ROG Ally X. But of course, you do need to have a great connection, and that's it. But other than that, I just want to compare these two devices. I can't leave the PlayStation Portal out of this video because it is still a handheld that I really love to use and I use a lot. So yeah, those are the differences between these two devices. I love the screen there because it's 8 inches, 1080p, 60 hertz. But of course, this one being 7 inches, for me it feels smaller. Yes, it's better when it comes to VRR and 120 hertz. But when you're doing remote play, you don't really need that extra stuff. So now let's go ahead and compare it to one of my favorite handheld devices, which is the Nintendo Switch 2. Of course, the Nintendo Switch 2 came out this year, and the price for the Nintendo Switch 2 is actually only $449. I say only $449 when back when it came out, it was a lot of people were complaining of how expensive it is. $449. Oh my God, people were going crazy. But now that this is $1,000, you know, you know, what can we say, right? So yeah, this is $1,000. That's $449. So that means you technically can buy 2 Nintendo Switch 2s for cheaper, $100 cheaper than what you can get a Xbox ROG Ally. But when it comes to the screen size, I love this one over here because the Nintendo Switch 2 actually has a 7.9 inches, 1080p, VRR, up to 120 hertz. When it comes to the ROG Ally, like I said again, 7 inches, 1080p, 120 hertz, and it actually has VRR. So spec-wise, they are very kind of similar, but of course the big difference is, for me, it's the size. 7 inches versus 7.9. I really prefer the bigger screen. I really prefer the screen on the Nintendo Switch. But when it comes to handheld, you know, when it comes to ergonomics, the Nintendo Switch cannot hold anything against the ROG Ally X. It just feels so good, and this has always been one of my huge complaints about the Nintendo Switch, that it's just flat. There's zero ergonomics whatsoever when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, but I really love that it has a freaking kickstand. I wish this over here had a kickstand because the dock that actually comes with this, it's very, very cheap. It's cardboard, but yeah. But other than that, you know, when it comes to spec-wise, the ROG Ally X obviously is better spec-wise. It has 12 gigabytes of RAM over here versus 24 gigabytes of RAM over here. It has the latest processor Z2 Extreme, AI Z2 Extreme. The battery life on these two is actually pretty damn similar. You know, this, even though this has a big, huge battery, 80 watts per hour battery, you can actually get around 2 hours up to 6 or 7 hours, depending what you're playing here. Same thing goes over here. This does, I don't know the exact wattage hour that this has, but you can technically get 2 hours up to 6 or 7 hours, depending what games that you're playing. So battery wise, they're pretty much the same. But of course, the huge difference when it comes to these two handhelds is this is locked to the Nintendo. Of course, if you want to play just Nintendo games and whatever third-party games comes to the Nintendo Switch and there's no adjustment whatsoever, and you're just loading the games, plug and play, hit play, and start playing, this is the device for you. Because you don't have to go through any adjustments whatsoever, anything like that. But over here, you got a full-blown PC. This is not just running the full Xbox experience, here, you also, you can also, when you press right here, right, you go ahead here, boom, boom, and it takes you to the desktop, which turns it into a PC. So that for me is a huge advantage, because from here you can actually install games from Steam, from Epic, and Xbox Game Pass natively. Of course, you can install it here. This, you're just locked to that. So when it comes to choosing any of these two devices, it really depends. What type of gamer are you? Do you want to go through all the headaches? Or I don't consider it a headache. Some people do consider it a headache, especially those that are new to handheld gaming PC. I love this. I love going through all the tweaking and everything. I love it. The tinkering. I love it. Some people don't. Some people just want to hit play, download, play, and that's it. So if that's you, this is for you. If you just want to have a handheld gaming device that you can do more than just gaming, this is the device for you. Or not just this one, but any handheld gaming PC is going to do the job. So yeah, that's the comparison between these two devices. When you ask me which one I prefer, honestly, I do prefer this or any device that's like this, because it is open. I can install anything from very tiny indie games to very big AAA games here on the Xbox Ally X. Here, I'm just locked to Nintendo games that plays the best, and some AAA games, we're crossing fingers that they actually run good. That's the problem with the Nintendo Switch 1 and the Nintendo Switch 2. It's still the same problem. But yeah, I do love my Nintendo Switch 2, but if I had to choose one forever and only one, I would have to choose this one, because I would not be locked to one operating system. So now let's go and compare the Ally X versus one of the most popular devices out there in the market, which is the Steam Deck, especially the Steam Deck OLED. So of course, this is the Steam Deck OLED. You put it side to side, it's gonna look bigger when it comes to the screen, because on the Steam Deck OLED, you actually have a 7.4 inches OLED screen, 800p, 90 hertz, and everything on that screen is just gonna look gorgeous, versus of course 7 inches, 1080p, 120 hertz, and VRR on the Xbox Ally X. Of course, it still looks good when you look at this video. The trailers and videos and gameplay still look good on both devices. I do prefer the OLED because, of course, it's always going to have an edge. And I do like the bigger screen. It feels bigger because it's actually 16 by 10 instead of 16 by 9. So yeah, I do prefer the Steam Deck when it comes to the screen. I really wish that this was actually, if it was 7 inches, okay, 7 inches, but let it be 16 by 10. That way it could also be a little bit more wider as well, instead of 16 by 9. But yeah, we got 16 by 9 versus 16 by 10, which games over here actually looks better because it takes the whole full screen. I don't like that the ROG has so much bezels on top and bottom, same thing on the sides. And I don't know, I do prefer the bigger screen, 16 by 10 versus 16 by 9. Spec wise, of course, the Ally X is going to be better than this. But when it comes to gaming experience, it doesn't feel that much different yet. And remember, this just came out the other day, so it's still getting updates. It's still going to get updated as months pass, as year passes. This is still going to get updated. This is I would say this is on its last legs. I don't think it's going to take too many years before we actually get a Steam Deck 2. And my prediction, I think next year we're going to get a Steam Deck 2. There's no official announcement whatsoever, but I think in my opinion we're going to see a Steam Deck 2 in the near future. This is how it looks on the sides. When it comes to ergonomics, I do like both devices. I never complained about the Steam Deck. I think that the Steam Deck is one of the best handhelds to actually hold in your hand and actually game on it for hours and hours and hours, because I do love the ergonomics and how pronounced this right here is, where you're actually going to be holding the device to actually game. So it's almost similar to this. This one, of course, is more pronounced because it's in actual Xbox handheld devices here, feels controller, and it does feel good. The triggers are bigger. Let me see how big it is. Man, look how huge these triggers are compared to the Steam Deck. They're huge. Also, when it comes to the Windows versus Linux, this is Linux for those that don't know, SteamOS. What I like about this is that it does feel like a console. When you turn it on, you don't see anything Windows whatsoever or Linux whatsoever. You can live mostly here, and the updates, you could just do it from here. And that's the great thing about it. This is getting close. This is getting very, very close. And that's why I am loving the Xbox experience. But of course, this is also a computer. When you go ahead here, you could go ahead and switch to desktop, which I barely do. That's one big difference between these two devices, that I barely go to the desktop on here, right? This is a full-blown PC as well, but this is Linux instead of Windows. But I barely go to here. I barely go there. Here, of course, we do the same thing. You got the Xbox experience, which is great because when you launch the game, the console, it launches here, which is awesome. But yes, you could go to Windows, bam, just like that, and start doing PC things just like you would over there. Of course, PC apps are going to be more compatible here because this is Windows versus Linux. So far, as I've been using this device, I've been having to go more into Windows to do updates and all that and do adjustments than when I have to do over here. Over here, I barely ever go to desktop. Here, I see myself going to Windows desktop a lot more than I do on the Steam Deck device. But when it comes to differences in prices, it's a huge difference as well. This is $1,000. This is right now $549, and sometimes it actually goes on sale. I think like a month ago it actually went on sale. But yeah, if you're gonna get one of these devices, Steam Deck, I really recommend to get the OLED version, not the LCD versions, even though they're gonna be tempting. But you know, I've been playing latest games here as well. You do have to lower down the graphics, or sometimes, most of the times, it lowers down the graphics. They have a very similar system when it comes to compatibility. You know, over here, when you go to the system, the Xbox, right? You go to the Xbox. Nope, let's go and continue there. Actually, some games, when you look at them, I'm going to see. Okay, let me see what happened to the control. Okay, there you go. So when you go to some of the games, you can click right here. You're going to see that option right here. It says, will perform on your device, handheld optimized, Metacritics. So this thing has almost the same thing, right? But over here, instead of getting that message right there, you're actually going to get check marks or a little exclamation marks letting you know that, yes, this is verified or this is playable on your devices. So I'm going to wait for this to load up. Okay, it loaded up. So right now, for example, that game right there is actually verified. It's not verified, it's playable because it has that little icon right there. Some games, you're gonna go, for example, Spider-Man. We go to Spider-Man, this is verified, so it has that right there. So they both are getting the same experience when it comes to verified versus not verified. But keep in mind, every game is still gonna play here. I do like both devices, but honestly, if you tell me which one would I prefer, I do always, ever since the Legion Go, I always prefer Windows over SteamOS. Always prefer that because it's open. You can install everything here without doing any hacks whatsoever. Yes, you could do the same thing over there technically, but you have to go through hacks, loops and watching tutorial videos to actually get it done over there. This out of the box, you can install any PC launcher whatsoever and start playing games here as well. That same thing goes to any Windows handheld gaming PC. You could do the same thing there and most likely even cheaper. But of course, this has the latest processor, and this one is actually getting older. But if you wanted just to play like the best indie games and great AAA games, you're still gonna have a good time over there. So yeah, that is the comparison between these two devices. If you ask me, like I said, which one do I prefer? I do prefer this one over here because it's more open. I think handheld wise, comfort wise, it does feel better. It does look uglier. I think the Steam Deck still looks better than the ROG Ally. Much better, way better. And it has the touch pads. This, I hate it that most of the times I have to start wiping the screen because it's full of fingerprints. But yeah, when it comes to these two devices, now Windows actually launches into Xbox Experience. Over here, it launches into Steam Deck or Steam OS. So let me know in the comments what you think. What device do you prefer the most? And also let me know in the comments what device do you have currently rocking. Do you have the Nintendo Switch, ROG Ally, the Ally X, Steam Deck, Legion Go? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Till next time. Bye-bye.